stating the facts. He did me a
That's exactly my point.
Yeah.
But see, when you state the facts, they will accuse you of judging them.
If you say, "The Lord will be paid."
I'm assuming that this is the same Alexander from 1 Timothy 1:20. Paul says that he was shipwrecked of the faith. So evidently he was at one time in right standing with God, and because he had now shipwrecked his faith, he says he did great harm or much evil. Now, one of the things that always is consistent with the Bible is the fact that it's not the ungodly that persecutes us, it's religious people. Religious people always persecuted the true followers of God.
Well, they're the first to stand in line anyway.
Yeah.
The ungodly do follow behind them.
Yeah, the ungodly do, but they're usually the first in line.
You know what's interesting? When Gary was raised Catholic many years, grown up Catholic, and when his sister found out that he left Catholic,
That was a dirtbag.
boy, he says, man, they said to Gary, they said, man, your mom's going to roll over in her grave because you're no Catholic no more. I'm like, wow.
Tell them they really don't roll over in their graves.
Now, there was one person that rolled over in his grave, and that was just to get off the pedestal that he was laying on.
Possibly Alexander testified falsely and brought false charges against Paul. Verse 15, of whom be thou were also, the Apostle Paul tells Timothy to watch out for Alexander, who has greatly resisted their words. This suggests that the man went about opposing the gospel and those who minister it. Verse 16.
Fresh coffee out there for no one.
This refers to Paul's defense of the gospel at some place where Alexander opposed the gospel, or at his first defense before Nero when he could not find any man to plead his cause. It says all men forsook him. Well, the thing that I like most here, verse 16. At my first answer, no man stood with me, but all men forsook me. I pray God that it may not be laid to their charge. And all men forsook him, but he was still praying to God because he knew that God did not forsake him.
He still had his eyes on the trophy.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay.
Cool. He ran that far, he wasn't going to stop now, was he?
No.
We've gone this far, imagine we'll go the rest of the way.
There you go. Anybody else? 17 and 18?
Notwithstanding, the Lord stood with me and strengthened me, that by me the preaching might be fully known, that all the Gentiles might hear. And I was delivered out of the mouth of lions. And the Lord shall deliver me from every evil work, and will preserve me unto his heavenly kingdom, to whom be glory forever and ever. Amen.
Awesome.
Well, everybody abandoned him, pretty much, and the Lord stood with him and strengthened him, that the gospel would be fully known, and that the Gentiles, non-Jews, Greeks, and everybody else could hear. When it says he was delivered out of the mouth of the lion, I would say that he was probably referring to Satan. It was about as a roaring lion.
Mm-hmm.
Delivered out of the mouth of the lion because they weren't going to.
That's one of the two explanations.
That's how I would take it.
Yeah.
He wasn't literally going to be thrown to the lions like Daniel. But he was delivered out of the mouth of the lion. I believe he's referring to the accuser of the brethren.
Well, actually, some say that that's exactly what he was referring to, that he would not be thrown into the lion's den because he was a citizen he was a Roman citizen. Roman citizens did not get thrown into the lion's den.
Yeah, decapitated.
So that's what they were saying. Some say that it is a reference to Satan, that delivered from the power and the words of Satan. Probably again a reference to Alexander, Satan working through him. or to being thrown in the lion's den, that he was a Roman citizen and he would not be going that route.
Or it
He
could
would
be
use
both.
plural for lions.
Or it could be both.
He'd say, yeah, he delivered me out of the mouth of the lions if it was going to be thrown in the lion's den, and he was a singular of the mouth of the lions, which means I don't know what that sounds
Unless they were one lion at a time.
One lion at a time, yeah.
Yeah, lion is singular. Where he began reading in verse 17, but the Lord stood near me. The fact that the word but is there is a connector. So you go back to verse 16 and I'll reread that. In my first offense, no one came to my side, but they all forsook me. May they not be held accountable. There's the connector. But the Lord stood near me and infused power into me, so that through me preaching might be fully accomplished and all the nations might hear it. And I was rescued from the lion's mouth. And what I'm seeing here is that Paul's attitude, and was expressed a couple verses before, or a verse before, where he doesn't judge, he leaves it to Jehovah to repay. And here again, in verse 16, he says, may they not be held accountable. And it's because of that nature that he doesn't take it on himself to judge. He leaves it to God. He waits on God. He has forbearance for these people that have made harm and hurt him. That God worked through him. You know, that nature in him, that he could be that way. And you know, that had to be quite a shift in Paul's nature, because here he was bringing Christians for judgments and destruction, because they were not upholding the law like he was. He was so zealous in the law. And there's no forgiveness in the law. But here, you know, he doesn't judge at all.
We got comment on the second verse that he read.
Oh, living from every evil word? Yeah, I mean, Alexander's accomplishment was one of the ones that was responsible for the evil word. Will preserve me under this heavenly kingdom. Yeah, I think that has been sealed with the Holy Spirit through the day of redemption. Will preserve me under this heavenly kingdom. So keep you safe and preserved so you finally make it. So much for eternal security.
Yeah.
Well,
It says that the Lord shall deliver me from every evil work. It does not say that he's going to deliver him from death.
No.
And that surely was
Because he's expected to death.
but what happened? He knew where he was going.
Because he had everything accomplished the Lord had placed before him and set out to preach to the Gentiles and all the other people. It was already accomplished. He'd been delivered from all the evil. His job was done.
Yeah.
So
So that's
his payment was heaven.
Yeah, and that's what we see in the last part of verse. That's what we see in the last part of 18. And will preserve me unto his heavenly kingdom. So Paul knew that God would preserve him from evil, and that he would reach the heavenly kingdom.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, in this thing, this is what we want. We want this for ourselves. That, you know, he had this confidence. He had ultimate confidence that the Lord will rescue me from every wicked work and will save me for his heavenly kingdom. And in Revelation 24, this is what Paul would have been seeing. And I saw thrones, and those who sat on them were given authority to judge. Yes, I saw the souls of those executed for the witness they gave about Jesus and for speaking about God, and those who had not worshipped the wild beast or its image. And so this is what Paul was looking forward to, being seated on one of these thrones. And you know, when you have that kind of confidence and understanding of what to allow God to work through you, you don't engage in the wicked works, and you don't engage in the judgment. You have that forbearance.
And this is what I was talking about earlier. Is that what I like about this is that all men forsook Paul, but the Lord was standing with him. And in verse 17, it says, the Lord stood with him and strengthened me. What's interesting is the phrase strengthen me is a common phrase used in Paul's writings. It's mentioned 8 times in Paul's writings, which 8 is the number of abundance. And God had given Paul abundant strength to go through all the trials and difficulties he had to go. The very first place where it says that Paul was strengthened by God is in Acts 9:22, and it says this, Paul increased in strength. And so at the very beginning of this ministry, Paul, it states from Luke that Paul was strengthened. And he was strengthened so that someday that he would not have to depend on men, but that he could just depend on God to stand before ungodly men that were seeking to kill him and do him great harm. So from the very beginning of Paul's salvation to the very end of his ministry, from beginning to end, from the very beginning of the ministry to the very end of the ministry, it talks about Paul being strengthened from God. So that's what I think God has for each and every one of us. That He has called us, and it doesn't make any sense He would call us without strengthening us or equipping us.
Yeah.
And so He calls us, He equips us, and He strengthens us. And especially, this is especially important because you got to remember, this is always keep in the thought that this is a latter day book. This book is about the last days. It's about the last days of Paul, granted, but the bulk of this book is about how we're to live in the last days and what we can expect. This is about expectations of what you're going to see in the last days. So, as Christian believers, as we see from the very beginning to the end of Paul's ministry that he was strengthened by God, we can expect that in the last days. If you take a look at your life, you'll see that from the very beginning of your life, God has given you strength to be able to go through trials and difficulties. And we have to see that if we're living in the last days, which I believe we are, that as times get more and more difficult and we're tested in greater ways, God will give us the strength to get through those trials.
Yeah.
If we'll stand with Him and continue to speak the truth.
Exactly.
Tuck in that little phrase there of 17, that through me the proclamation might be fully accomplished. Now, every time that people came after Paul, what did he do? He used that opportunity to preach the gospel one more time. There in Ephesus, there in the jail in Philippi, when he came into Jerusalem for the last time. No matter what happened, he didn't shut up.
Well, Paul is also aware of his last witness on earth, the last witness he would bear on earth. That's why I think he spoke may not be held against him, because even in the beginning of Jesus' ministry, we're told not to speak evil of anyone else. We're told not to hold anything against anyone. We're told to pray for our enemies. We're told to bless those who abuse us. So, I think Paul would have been very aware of this, and if at the end of our time we're given a choice, try to say, Lord, don't hold it against them, or God, they're rotten people, they hate you, damn them, God. We have the right to do either one. Because Jesus said, what is bound on earth will be bound in heaven. What's loosed on earth will be loosed in heaven. If we forgive, it will be forgiven. If we do not forgive, it will not be forgiven. These are words from Jesus. So Paul is, I think right here, more than anything else, is telling Timothy, this is my final witness.
Well, in addition to what you just said, you know, the judgment that we did